Good evening. Owner of Kemlani Mart, Steve Kemlani, has disclosed that a Jamaica Public Service transformer is the cause of the fire that erupted at the store this morning. Mr. Kemlani, who was speaking to reporters outside his store on Constant Spring Road in St. Andrew, said he received a call minutes to 7 this morning that a JPS transformer located at the back of the store had exploded. He added that despite members of the Jamaica Fire Brigade being observed breaking store windows, this was done to release smoke and not because the team was having difficulty entering the building. Meanwhile, Public Relations Officer for the Jamaica Fire Brigade, Emilio Abanks, told reporters that they received a call about 6:46 a.m. that the location that houses the Kemlani Mart store was on fire. Mr. Abanks said that the fire brigade team responded initially with 3 units. The fire took some time to extinguish and was restricted to the back of the building. Major efforts were made to ensure that the front of the building was not affected. 2 government ministers yesterday voiced conflicting views about the long-running issue of dress code in schools, a day after the controversy was reignited at a high school in Westmoreland. This played out during the official launch of the 2022-2023 school year held at the Cedar Grove Academy in St. Catherine under the theme Building Resilience, Strengthening Recovery, Achieving Excellence. State Minister in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, Alonda Tarralong, in voicing his views about the issue in his address, pressed educators to ensure that the rights of all young kings and queens to an education are not infringed.
As educators, it is incumbent on all of us to recognize that our first and primary duty, the duty of paramount, is to educate our young kings and queens. As educators, we must recognize that the best gift that we can give to our children is an education. As educators, we must recognize that after 2 years of lost learning due to the COVID pandemic, that we have a moral obligation to ensure that the human rights of all our young kings and queens to an education is never infringed. What is a school if not the children who enter its halls and its classrooms to learn and to be empowered? What is a school if our children are denied an education by virtue of being locked out of schools? What good is our motto as a nation that says every child can learn, every child must learn, again, if children are periodically locked out of schools?
Mr. Tarralong says that the length of the girls' dresses attending school and their hairstyles being policed is, quote, completely unnecessary.
I heard on the radio this morning one school principal indicating that the length of the girls' dress all the way down to the ankles was to deter sexual attacks and sexual predators. And I want to say that that is a folly. It is completely unnecessary that we police the length of our students' dresses and skirts. It is also a complete folly that we police black hair and seek to control every single curl or knot of our beautiful black hair. At some point, as a body of schools, we must recognize that our education is the primary importance of every child, and that whether a child wears locks like mine, and whether a child has, I noticed our chairman who stood up here so eloquently and so beautifully, and whether a child's skirt resembles that of the chairman who spoke before me, that it does not deter them from getting an education. It does not. What deters our children from getting an education is when we lock them out of the schools, is when we send them back home into the streets and leave them to all sorts of dangers that lurk Sometimes parents are not home because they are working. What then are we expecting our children to do? How safe are they? The safest place for our children is in our schools.
Meanwhile, Minister of Education and Youth, Favour Williams, in making her address to the launch, encouraged parents to help their children to obey the school rules and voice their opinions in a peaceful and respectful manner.
Contentious parents, you're the ones to deal with students who may not want to obey the rules. And this school year, I will be vocal in calling on our parents to encourage their children to obey the school rules. If parents believe that the rules are for a different era, the proper thing to do is to engage the process. Attend PTAs, parent-teacher consultation meetings, speak to the principal, not just come in and cuss. What I say is, if we can't teach our children discipline in school, when do we teach them?
Minister Williams noted that a variety of programs can be implemented, but if parents are not working with schools, then initiatives will not be effective.
So in order to make this a successful school year, we have to get our parents on board. We can implement all kinds of programs in schools, and I know our teachers will dutifully carry out those programs. But if our parents are not working with us, they are not likely to be successful. And so I want to say to our principals, especially the principal at Godfrey Stewart High School, I want to say to the principal, we stand with you. We understand the situation. It's not what was reported in social media. Social media did not report it well. And we need to support our principals when they stand up for discipline in schools.
Their comments were obviously influenced by Monday's ugly disturbance at Godfrey Stewart High School after students were denied entry due to breaches of the dress code. Although parents and students protested, the school stuck to its view that skirts are no more than 5 inches above the ankle to protect girls from being molested, and boys' pants must not be less than 16 inches in diameter. In other news this evening, 4 supermarkets and restaurants and a bakery in Montego Bay were ordered closed yesterday by health officials, and there are plans to focus on street food vendors next. Chief Public Health Inspector for St. James, Sharika Lewis, explained that some of the breaches identified were pest infestation and temperature abuse during cold storage. Additionally, 400 pounds of pig carcass that were found uninspected in storage were seized and condemned. She said rat-bitten fruit juices were also seen during a visit to the business places. 14 establishments were visited by health officials, the police, and representatives from the National Solid Waste Management Authority as part of the ongoing thrust to restore public order in St. James, dubbed Operation Restore Paradise. Yesterday's closures were the first major clampdown by health officials since the initiative was launched in August. Yesterday's operation focused mostly on establishments within the commercial area of St. James Street. Ms. Lewis said there are plans to do a nighttime operation that will focus on street food vendors. She also urged consumers to be careful. A 50-year-old man died from injuries he received in a suspected hit-and-run accident along the Green Island Main Road in Hanover this morning. He's been identified as Darren White, a laborer of Green Island in the parish. Reports by the police are that about 2:45 a.m., White was walking along a section of the Green Island Main Road in the direction of Westmoreland when he was hit by a motorist who failed to stop. Mr. White sustained head and body injuries and died on the spot. Residents summoned the police, and upon their arrival, the scene was processed and Mr. White's body was removed to the morgue for post-mortem examination. 46-year-old Leon Reed, otherwise called Nose, a taxi driver of Phase 3 in Havana Heights, Clarendon, was charged with abduction and assault occasioning actual bodily harm following an incident in the parish on Wednesday, September 7, 2022. The charges stem from an incident involving Reed and the mother of his child. Reports are that about 5 p.m., Reed went to the woman's workplace where an argument developed about a tattoo that she had removed. Reed allegedly punched her in the face several times and used threats to force her into his motor car, after which he took her to his home. She was rescued by the police, who was contacted by a relative. Reed fled the scene and was later apprehended by the police on Friday, September 9, during a special operation. He was subsequently charged. He appeared before the Clarendon Parish Court today. Transport Minister Audley Shaw has given a commitment to bus operators plying the Lawrence Tavern to Halfway Tree route to look into the inadequacy of bus stops. The operators met with the Minister Shaw to express their concerns following a peaceful protest staged by the transport operators in the corporate area this week. The Prime Minister also says the issue of few bus stops and drivers being harassed if they stop to let off passengers coming from Stony Hill and other areas along the route were key matters raised in the operators in the meeting yesterday. Head of the Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Branch, ACP Gary McKenzie, said the bus stops were removed because there was an issue with traffic flow. ACP McKenzie further noted that where the bus stops are currently designated is to ensure that the order is maintained on the road. Minister Shaw has promised to look into the issue. He says the bus stops must be re-established. The Transport Minister says there are now no bus stops where they were before the road was repaired. He says only do not stop signs have been erected in those areas. This, he says, is not practical. In the meantime, Minister Shaw says he could not respond to the call by the operators for a traffic ticket amnesty. He says the amnesty would allow them to pay off tickets issued to them in recent months. The operators allege that they are being harassed by the police with high-cost traffic tickets, which in some instances have led to the revocation of their licenses. Minister Shaw says the issue of a traffic ticket amnesty is the responsibility of another ministry. And Mello TV will continue to bring you updates on this developing story in subsequent newscasts. A St. James businessman who decided not to object to the request for extradition will now be extradited to the United States after being arrested on the suspicion of being the mastermind behind a local lottery fraud ring. The accused 38-year-old Anthony Stewart of Bogue Village on Monday appeared in the Kingston and St. Andrew Parish Court with his attorney Richard Lynch, where he waived his right to an extradition hearing. Mr. Stewart is wanted in North Carolina on the charge of mail and wire fraud. In August 2013, major organized crime and anti-corruption task force personnel made their first arrest of Mr. Stewart and his spouse Felicia Lindo in connection with a lottery fraud scheme. The accusations against both were dropped at that time. However, in September 2016, in the U.S., Lindo was detained once more and subsequently charged and sentenced to 24 months in prison and 3 years supervised release. Lindo was also ordered to pay $292,900 in restitution. The Jamaica Customs Agency's efforts to combat illicit trade in the country's marine space have been significantly boosted with the acquisition of a new purpose-built maritime patrol vessel. The craft, an Ecuadoriano 320 patrol boat named Enforcer 1, which is equipped with navigation, communication, and safety apparatus, is 37 feet long and has two 300-horsepower engines, which will enable it to maneuver high tides at sea while in operation during inclement weather. Speaking at the recent commissioning ceremony held at the JCA's Port Royal base, the agency's Chief Executive Officer and Commissioner of Customs, Velma Ricketts-Walker, said the vessel's acquisition is an indication of the entity's thrust to improve efficiency in its border protection activities. She further pointed out that the timely acquisition would be very beneficial on the part of the Sufferance Wharves team, which has skillfully managed to continue their efficient work despite not having all the tools to adequately perform their duties. The commissioner reminded that with the assistance of other law enforcement and border regulatory bodies, a collaborative effort is being taken to ensure that the nation and people are protected. The agency is also an active participant in the government of Jamaica's Get Every Illegal Gun campaign. Governor General, His Excellency the Most Honorable Sir Patrick Allen, and Prime Minister Andrew Holness will be attending the state funeral of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II at Westminster Abbey in London on September 19. Prime Minister Holness made the disclosure in a tribute to the late monarch during yesterday's sitting of the House of Representatives. The Queen, Great Britain's longest reigning monarch, died peacefully at her home in Scotland on September 8 at age 96. She ascended the throne in 1952 following the death of her father, King George VI, and was crowned on June 6, 1953. Mr. Holness noted that the Queen's long and transformational reign saw the world go through some seismic changes, including the evolution of the Commonwealth, the end of the Cold War era, and the COVID-19 pandemic. He said the Queen was the most traveled of the British monarchs, visiting over 100 countries on behalf of the Crown. The Prime Minister noted that she was endeared the world over, not only for her support and patronage of countless charities and programs, but also a symbol of dignity of the British throne. During her reign, the Queen made 6 visits to Jamaica, the first being in November 1953 as a newly appointed head of state. The Prime Minister said he was present as an elected new Member of Parliament when Her Majesty addressed the joint sitting of the House and Senate during her last visit in 2002. Mr. Holness said the Queen will be long remembered for her dedication to the British monarch and unswerving commitment and service to the Commonwealth and all territories. He noted that her death marks the end of an era for the people of the United Kingdom and a beginning for the Jamaican state. And those are the stories making the news this evening. I'm Nicole Hales. Thanks for watching.